Welcome to Ancient Future on Sweet Soul Synergy TV, where we bridge ancient wisdom and modern science for a happier future. I'm your host, Stephanie Milan. Our guest today is a creator, a teacher, a storyteller, a drummer, a retreat master, and a spiritual leader who has directed spiritual gatherings for over 30 years. He runs Sacred Tree Drumming, which includes drumming experiences, retreats, and even walking the medicine wheel and Labyrinth. Please welcome Tom Campbell. Welcome back, Tom. And as you guys saw in the beginning, we were practicing the ceremony of smudging, and we'll talk about that in just a second. I would like to mention that it's Native American Heritage Month, so I think it's really important that we're talking about this with Thanksgiving coming up, the idea of learning and educating ourselves about the Native American history and some of the beautiful spiritual traditions that they have that are important to us today as well. So let's get into talking about sage and the smudging ceremony.
Yes, we showed the viewers a smudging ceremony, which I do towards the beginning of my drumming sessions, because smudging is a good way to release negative energies. It's also a good way to send up prayers to the Great Spirit and receive positive energies back. Mm-hmm. It's mostly done with white sage, although it could be done with juniper, lavender, cedar, and other herbs. Okay. And actually with a pending shortage of white sage, there's a little bit of a movement right now to use other herbs rather than the white sage. The white sage, however, is important because it's deemed to be the most powerful of the cleansing herbs. Okay. And that's why it's maybe being overused at this point, because the native peoples felt that it was the most powerful, in that the other herbs are also powerful, but the white sage seems to be the one that has the most power to it.
Interesting.
So the saging does those things, and it's another example of how science has caught up with the native tradition, in that science is now verifying that sage has some other properties to it. It produces negative ions. Negative ions have been shown to do a number of things. They balance out positive ions. What are positive ions? Positive ions get into the air and into your energy from your cell phone, which you carry around every minute of every day. Electronics such as your iPad, your laptop, your microwave oven, your TV, your radio, all produce positive ions.
Right.
Positive ions are connected to and have been affiliated with what they call free radicals. Free radicals are those things that have been known to cause inflammation, heart disease, and other conditions that a lot of people do suffer from. So they found the negative ion environment to be very positive for people sleeping. A study was done that showed people improve their depression. Also, it affects the serotonin in your body so that there is a mood change. Negative ions are physiologically taken right into your body, so you do have a better mood, a calmer, peaceful, more feeling about it. And there was one study that showed that negative ions took out 94% of the bacteria in a room.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. It shouldn't be news to us, considering the ancient use of sage for so many years, not just for smudging ceremonies, but as an all-healer herb for your body. I mean, I was doing some research on the use of just the herb sage, and they said it went back to ancient Babylonian times. They was used in ancient Egyptian, ancient Greek, ancient Roman, and the Chinese tradition. And in fact, there was one article talking about how the Chinese would give away their green tea for the sage because they knew that sage was an all-healer and it was good for so many different things. And then, of course, when you use it in the smudging ceremony, it produces more wonderful effects for the body and for an environment. And yeah, I agree that probably there is everybody saying, hey, oh my goodness, there's so much negative energy out there, let's cleanse it, and it's causing a shortage of sage because people are finally realizing that this really is a powerful herb. And to go along with that, we were talking about the white sage. Now, I've read that black sage is more for the shamanic mystical experiences. Have you ever read that?
A little bit, yeah. There are different herbs that can do different things.
Okay.
Lavender is used for more of the calming, and then there's juniper and cedar can also be used. Each have different properties, but they all accomplish the same thing in that they do cleanse the environment. They do put out these negative ions, and they do provide certain benefits that we just talked about. However, the white sage is more powerful from the native perspective.
Very
and people will gravitate to that for that reason.
So you use sage then to cleanse an area before you do work or after you do work? Is there a specific point in which you will do it?
All of the above.
Okay.
Cleanse the space before, and then when the people are there drumming, we cleanse them and their energies, because I've found, and the people have found, that as they let go of things and they set intentions during the smudging, that they open themselves up to the drumming, and the benefits of the drumming are magnified significantly when people are more open to it. So the sage helps the individual people drumming to open up. I always ask them to send intentions up for that evening or that day or that period of time, whether it be just to be calm, just to forget about the day, forget about traffic, or maybe something you've been wanting to let go of for a long time, and everything in between. And then when people leave, I will smudge the space again,
Just
to
sure.
cleanse that,
Right.
in case someone did bring, a little bit of negativity in or some anger that they're holding on to. And people have told me that when they move into a home or an apartment, they will go around smudging every room in the home with that same idea of cleansing that energy from the past occupants of the place.
Absolutely.
And I've had other drumming groups, but no one's heard about saging, so it really does vary, but it is becoming, as you said, more mainstream in that sense.
Very, very cool. Let's move into this connection with the earth and having reverence for the earth, because there are some things you can do to ground to the earth, right? And to connect to the healing benefits of the earth. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, a couple things that I mentioned when I do a Labyrinth medicine wheel experience. One is called forest bathing, which is a Japanese tradition of, it's called Shirin Yoku. It's thousands of years old. It's the idea of walking in and through a forest and actually sitting down maybe if you can, and just being with the forest air. Trees emit compounds, and some of those compounds are used in medical cases for cancer treatment and other things. So it's those compounds that the trees emit as part of who they are that you're just getting. Just take a deep breath. Go in and take a deep breath. And the Japanese have places where they actually just do forest bathing, they call it, which is very common over there. And there are people over here now doing that, offering forest bathing kinds of experiences where they'll take you into a forest, sit you around, do some ceremony, the idea that you are enjoying the forest air and getting all those positive benefits from it.
Yeah, I'd like to just remark on that it's interesting in this society where we're always cutting trees down to build new buildings, put up another retail store. But I do think that there are people now, as we get more conscious about the planet and helping the planet and getting rid of things like plastic and all that kind of stuff, that we are saying, wait a minute, do we really want to, use this space and cut this down? Like, we need more trees. I mean, trees, I think if people understood how healing trees were to the body, considering the evidence shows us being a society that's pretty sick, that they wouldn't cut as many trees down, and they would be saying, oh, let's put more trees up, let's have more community gardens, let's do this, that, and the other, instead of just that old mentality, which was cut it down and put up a parking lot kind of deal, you know what I mean? So I do feel that that's something that people are starting to consider and say, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't do that. And you see people turning places in the city even into parks, or growing trees or growing community gardens, which I hope increases as time goes on and as we move into the future, and because I think that would bring us more to a utopia, honestly.
It probably would.
Yeah. That's just my thoughts. Who am I?
There are a lot of people now talking about that very concept, because there's some thought, as I mentioned in the first episode, that we've lost contact with who we are by disconnecting from the earth. If you think about the native peoples, they walked barefoot often, or animal skin shoes or moccasins. They slept on the earth or on animal skin. They were in touch with the earth. And there's some thought now that doctors ought to pay attention more to the fact that people have become disconnected from the earth. And that this concept, the other one in addition to forest bathing, is earthing, that is now gaining popularity. And that is going out, taking your shoes off and just standing on the earth. And again, science has shown that the earth is emitting negative ions from the environment. And those negative ions coming up into you do those same things that we talked about earlier with the smudging and the negative ions that are beneficial to you. So that concept of earthing, I take people out and we stand in the yard and I say, take off your shoes if you're comfortable. And some do and some don't. But that idea that you just need to just go out and stand on the earth. Now what do you do in the winter? Well, there's a whole science around that now of grounding. They now have sheets that you can buy or mats, so we could be sitting here or on our bare feet with the mat plugged in and we would get the same effect.
Interesting.
For people who can't go outside. And I think it was 23 this morning.
Yeah.
So a little cold to go out barefoot.
Exactly, a little
in
cold.
the yard. But that whole idea of earthing is gaining some momentum because it's reconnecting people to the earth.
Right.
And it has a lot of positive benefits for you, but also for your health. And they did a study that showed that people with gallbladder surgery recovered quicker when they were looking at trees.
Interesting.
And all those things that you mentioned about trees, and now they're showing that trees talk to each other, and that there's a network underneath the ground of how trees do talk to each other, and how a certain animal will start to eat the leaves of a tree and they'll send a message down the road so that by the time the animals get to the second one, they have changed the taste of the leaves in there.
Interesting.
And the animals are repelled by that because the tree is sending the message to each other that this is happening. So this whole idea of earthing, connection to the earth, trees, is very powerful, connects very closely with the native people and what they did just as part of their life. Being on the earth, of the earth, and thinking that everything was connected, everything was one.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like we've been given these gifts and then we completely ignored them for a period of time, and then it's now like we're wiser. We've learned from history the things that we did wrong, and now it's like, okay, so let's bring some of these things back because these were the things that made us well, and these were the things that made us happy and brought us joy and brought us real connection to our families and our friends and the earth. And I think that's so special, and it's so important that we continue on that path and keep focusing on that so we can heal ourselves, because really the evidence is in they say the proof is in the pudding. The evidence is in the health of the people, and it's not very good. I can say that, so I think people want to heal, they want to become whole again, and I think that starts with connection. I really do. So let's talk about the medicine wheel and the labyrinth.
Yes, I have in my backyard a medicine wheel and a 5-circuit labyrinth that was built by myself and my wife, and we have experiences there where people come and experience the medicine wheel and the labyrinth. It's primarily a outside walking experience, although we do some drumming in the beginning, kind of set the tone and get some energies going. Then we go outside and we do the medicine wheel first. The medicine wheel that I have is divided into 4 quadrants, as many are, and it's similar to about 20,000, I think it's 40,000, different medicine wheels that existed when the Europeans came onto the continent.
Wow.
And some are still there because they're built as mounds, and you can find them around the world. They think medicine wheels existed in different places, but primarily they were found in the Americas. And it is a system of self-discovery. It is akin to the circle of life, the journey through life. I have people stand around the wheel in their birth moon, which is divided into 12 segments. There's also a 13th moon, which is another thing we won't get into.
Okay.
It's a little more complicated.
That'll be for next time.
But there's 12 moons. And what is interesting about the medicine wheel is that there's no dogma to it. It's a framework for how to live your life, but there's no teachings to it. Medicine wheels were used as places of celebration, where people gathered to contemplate, meditate, to connect with nature. Frequent use of the medicine wheel, it would develop more energy, and many have become almost like vortexes with energy coming up. And people who have walked my medicine wheel more than a couple times have commented on the increased energy that they feel each time they come. So as people do it, it's putting more energy into the wheel. So it is that system of self-discovery, of learning to understand who you are, what life is about. We're all on an earth walk, and what is your earth walk like? You know, is it boring? Is it filled with joy? You travel around the wheel throughout your life. The east is the place of birth and childhood. You know, south is the place for young adults, and the west is a place of introspection and adults, and of course the north is the white hair of the elders. And there are pathways around the wheel, and the segments lead to the center. And what's in the center? The Creator, the Great Spirit. He and she, the Spirit. Interesting enough, the Great Spirit or the Creator in Native American life was a verb, where for many of us it's a noun.
Right.
And it's not only a noun, it's a male noun. For the Native peoples, it was a verb, because there was, instead of that idea that it was a person, there was an idea that it was a being that was always becoming and spiraling, always growing, always expanding. And the Creator is surrounded by the grandfather Sun and grandmother Moon and Mother Earth. And then there are 4 clans around them, the Turtle Clan, the Frog Clan, the Thunderbird Clan, and the Earth Clan. And they all surround in the middle of the wheel. So the idea is you travel around the wheel, and then you travel down towards the center, going from the physical to the sacred. And in the center is where you find the sacred, the Creator, connect more with yourself. My wheel has 4 spirit pathways, but 3 stones in each pathway. And I have people go to a certain stone, and I have their messages there on those stones, whether they be in the south, the stone of love or illumination, or in the west, the stone of introspection, or in the south, the stone of growth and purity. And there's 12 spiritual pathway stones. People have said the walking of the wheel has been a most powerful experience for them, because it sort of leads them a little bit more inside, connects them more to who they are.
I actually had the privilege of doing that, and I felt that for sure that whatever I ended up picking up resonated with me at that moment so much. And I also think, I don't know if people understand, it's really just whatever they're drawn to. It's whatever they're drawn to, right? And it's because I think some people walk it and they're like, okay, well, where am I supposed to go? And what side am I supposed to go on? And it's a very intuitive process, right?
It is very intuitive. And what we do prior to opens you up and leads you to going to where you need to go. So that's the whole process of that medicine wheel experience, the drumming, the gathering around your birth moon, and then there are elemental clans that you belong to, spirit keepers on the medicine wheel, and we go through a little bit that in very short time frame, because it is very complex. There's 4 elements, there's 4 plants, and there's 4 directions, and it gets very complicated. But we keep it simple so people can experience it without having to get whacked out with all the information. And it is an experience that, as you said, does draw you into something, and people find it to be very powerful because of that.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Labyrinth then, because I've had the privilege of also walking the Labyrinth, and it's a very calming experience, right?
It is. In my medicine wheel / Labyrinth experience, which we've added now guided meditation to that, the people experience both. But you can experience one by themselves without doing the other. But I kind of weave it into one experience. So you do the medicine wheel. Some people will break up after we do the initial medicine wheel introduction and walk the Labyrinth, and then some walk the medicine wheel, and then they switch and walk the other. But either one can be done separately. Labyrinths are over 4,000 years old. They have different designs. Mine's more circular, 7 circuit. They're not a maze because they lead to the middle. It's a symbol that's not natural in nature. or intuitive. So there's some sense that someone's consciousness was inspired to create the first labyrinth, which was over in India, I think. The first walking labyrinth the oldest one was over in India. But they found them on coins and in churches and on hills and all places all around the world. So something happened that led people to develop this symbol.
When people see a labyrinth, how should they approach walking a labyrinth?
There's three parts to walking a labyrinth. The first is the preparation prior to. Now, the sacred tree labyrinth in my backyard has an outer circle that's not part of most labyrinths. It's grass, whereas the labyrinth is a small pebble stone.
Okay.
And I tell people to walk around the whole outside of the labyrinth and to gather their thoughts and to just set some intentions for walking the labyrinth. It's a meditative walk. It's a connection to the divine and to yourself. And it has many 90 degrees turns in it where you actually turn. And each turn represents part of your journey. When you're walking the labyrinth, the idea is to walk at your own pace. There are no rules to walking. You can stop. I have trees in my labyrinth, which is very unusual as well. So people connect with the trees in the labyrinth, find them touching the trees, holding them, trying to get something from their walk that's connected to the trees. But you arrive in the middle. You can only arrive in the middle. There's a bench there. You can look out at the forest. And then the third part is a journey back, to take something out from your journey. And you just retrace your steps and come back out and around the circle and out. So there's three parts: the preparation, the actual walk to the middle, and then the walk out, where you come out with a better sense of maybe something you asked for, something you were inspired about, sense of who you are, maybe a deeper connection to the divine, a whole number of things. It's very personal and individual kind of experience.
What it reminds me of is I do a lot of work with the brain and studying the brain. It reminds me of a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere, and then the middle being the pineal gland, and that being the part where you have the most insight or the most intuition coming through and, you know, connecting and walking through and having the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. I don't know if that's accurate. It just kind of came to me as you were saying it. And, you know, I've walked it before and didn't really think of it in that way, but I imagine that it is such a calming experience, especially I think the one time that I did it, it was raining a little. And it was, believe it or not, such an amazing experience because, you know, you just hear the rain, the soft rain, and you're walking through, and I'm thinking, oh, if I was barefoot, and it was like, you know, it would be just, oh, the most calming experience. But is it typically made with stone, or do they make it, I mean, is it made with anything else, or do they use like little pebbles? Is that typical?
Oh no, it can be anything.
Okay.
The labyrinths are just dirt. The labyrinths that are grass with just an outline of rocks around it. It can be really anything that you want. Retreat centers might pave their labyrinths often because it's less maintenance to have some paving stones in there. Some have hedges that separate the pathways. It really is very individual in its design as well as how it's made.
And I imagine it would take quite some time to lay that, right? So how long did it take you to make yours?
It took quite a while, over a period of time, just laying it out in the yard. And plus
it to be even too. And
the pathways you want even, but the trees in my particular labyrinth were a challenge because I wanted the trees in it, but not in the actual pathway.
Okay.
So the trees, there are 4 or 5 in the labyrinth, but they were, the way we laid it out, you pass a tree, you don't actually bump right into it
right.
as you're walking through
I
it.
remember that. And then I imagine everything that you said about the healing power of these trees being in the labyrinth just makes it more powerful because you're right there with the compounds that are coming off of the tree.
People have said that, yeah. There's a famous labyrinth in a lobby, outer area in France, Chartreuse Labyrinth, that's one of the most famous in the world. But most of them are outside and sometimes in fields and not connected to anything. So the uniqueness of ours is that it's in the forest, trees are in the labyrinth, and that you're kind of walking the labyrinth in the forest, which is, I think, more powerful, as people have reported.
Well, Tom, we have a couple minutes left, so why don't you talk a little bit about some of the events that you're going to do and some of the things that you've done in the past.
I will. Thank you.
Okay.
First, want to say I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and to talk about all the things we talked about. It's very meaningful to me and a passion of mine. So to be able to sit with you who share the passion is very meaningful. I function under Sacred Tree Drumming as the name, sacredtreedrumming.com. I have a Facebook page and my own personal page. All my events are listed on my website. And the events range from drumming evenings. They can be in homes, community centers, churches, even places of business, because drumming is a good team building sort of experience. I do monthly drumming at my home in Deptford. Also retreats, anywhere from a half a day to a day-long retreat that I do. I'm coming up to the 7th annual day-long retreat at a retreat center in Pennsylvania, about 4 hours from where we are here. About 50 people have been gathering for that. Whole day of just drumming, storytelling. It's very cool. So the drumming can be anywhere. I have 30 drums I take with me. All you need to do is gather the people, and we have the experience. The Medicine Wheel Labyrinth is, of course, more localized in that it occurs in my backyard in Deptford, New Jersey. So my website will list upcoming events for those experiences as well in terms of when they are. Now that we're entering the wintry weather, it's a little bit difficult to plan outdoor activities, but we just may plan one in the winter.
Okay, very nice. Well, the links to Sacred Tree Drumming will be in the explanation below. And Tom, we're just so thankful for you being here. It was such a great discussion, and I really appreciate the energy that you bring to the conversation and all of your wisdom. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Of course. Thank you so much for tuning in to Ancient Future, and we will see you next time. Bye.